The story you are about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts featuring historical characters, events, or places that has played a role in shaping history. Please sit back and listen as I recite this narrative for you. Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo was born in Miami, Florida to Delia Aurora Gonzalez, a Cuban immigrant mother in 1962. She gave birth to Adolfo at the age of 15 and eventually had 3 children by different fathers, but married at one point. After her first husband died, she moved to San Juan, Puerto Rico and remarried there. Constanzo was baptized Catholic and served as an altar boy, but he also accompanied his mother on trips to Haiti to learn about voodoo. This conflict of religions must have had some sort of impact on Constanzo. In 1972, the family returned to Miami, and not long afterwards, his stepfather died, leaving the family with some money. When Constanzo was a teenager, he became a sorcerer's apprentice in the religious practice of Palo Mayombe, and part of this practice involved the sacrifice of animals. His mother had remarried again, and Constanzo's new stepfather was also involved in Palo Mayombe and was apparently involved in the drug trade. Constanzo and his mother were arrested numerous times for minor crimes like theft, vandalism, and shoplifting. His mother believed Constanzo was psychic, and she claimed he had foretold the attempted assassination of then-President Ronald Reagan. He graduated from high school but was expelled from prep school. When Constanzo became an adult, he moved to Mexico City. There he met Martin Quintana, Omar Orea, and George Montes, who would become his followers. They all became involved in a business where they would cast good luck spells, and this involved sacrifices of animals such as lion cubs, zebras, goats, chicken, and snakes. Many of his clients were rich drug dealers and hitmen who enjoyed the violence of Constanzo's magical displays. As a result of this business, Constanzo was introduced to other wealthy members of society, including corrupt Mexican policemen, who subsequently introduced him into the powerful drug cartels in the city. To successfully carry out his spell casting, Constanzo needed human bones. So Constanzo started to raid graveyards for human bones to put into his nganga or cauldron. Before long, his cult decided that the spirits of the dead that resides in the nganga would be stronger, providing the cults more powerful protection with live human sacrifices instead of old bones. The killings soon totaled more than 20 victims whose mutilated bodies were found in and around Mexico City. He had escaped detection because his victims were almost exclusively prostitutes, homeless people, and drug dealers. This process escalated until Constanzo eventually decided that the nganga needed the power of a brain from an American student, culminating with the 1989 murder of Mark Kilroy. Constanzo believed his magic spells enabled the cartels to be successful, and so demanded he be a business partner with the Calzadas, one of the most powerful families around at that time. They refused his demands, and soon after, 7 members of the family vanished. Later, when their bodies were found, they were incomplete. Some were missing ears, brains, fingers and toes, and one victim had their spine removed. Constanzo soon made friends with a new cartel, the Hernandez brothers. He also took up with a young woman named Sarah Aldrete, who became the high priestess of the cult. Constanzo made Aldrete second in command of his cult and directed her to supervise his followers while he was shipping marijuana over the border into the US. In 1988, Constanzo moved to Rancho Santa Elena, a house in the desert. It is there where he carried out more sadistic ritual murders, sometimes of strangers and other times of rival drug dealers. He also used the ranch to store huge shipments of cocaine and marijuana. Constanzo murdered a young pre-med student, Mark Kilroy, at the ranch on March 13, 1989. His henchman had kidnapped Kilroy outside a bar and taken him to Constanzo at his ranch. Kilroy was an American citizen who was on a holiday in Mexico at that time and following his murder, Mexican police were put under a lot of pressure from authorities in Texas to solve the murder. As a result, the police arrested 4 followers of Constanzo and the cult was uncovered. On April 1, Serafin Hernandez, a cult member and the nephew of the leader of the Hernandez family drug smuggling network, which had hired Constanzo to use black magic to bring them profit and protection, drove right through a police roadblock. Apparently, he actually believed that the magic potions of Constanzo sold to drug dealers worked. Hernandez thought that he was invisible to the police and led the police directly to Rancho Santa Elena, where officials found a large stash of drugs and guns. Police quickly discovered the cult and that Constanzo had been responsible for Kilroy's death. He sought a good or superior brain for one of his ritual spells. Officers raided the ranch and discovered Constanzo's cauldron, which contained various items such as a dead black cat and a human brain. 15 mutilated corpses were dug up at the ranch and one of them Kilroy's. Officials said Kilroy was killed by Constanzo with a machete chop to the back of the neck when Kilroy tried to escape about 12 hours after being taken to the ranch. Constanzo fled to Mexico City with 4 of his followers. They were only discovered when police were called to the apartment because of an unrelated dispute taking place there. As the officers approached, Constanzo, mistakenly believing they had located him, this brought in police reinforcements. Determined not to go to prison, he handed the gun to follower Alvaro de Leon and ordered him to open fire on him and Martin Quintana. By the time police reached the apartment, both Constanzo and Quintana were dead. Police arrested Alvaro de Leon and Sara Aldrete at the apartment. In total, charges were laid against 14 of the cult members. These charges ranged from drug running and obstruction to murder. De Leon was convicted and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Sara Aldrete was convicted of committing multiple murders and sent to prison for more than 60 years. 2 other members, Serafin Hernandez and Elio Hernandez, were also found guilty of multiple murders and sentenced to 60 years in prison. Robert Rozier, also known as Neriah Israel, was a former NFL player who, after quitting football, eventually joined a religious cult called the Brotherhood. Rozier was born in Alaska, but after the family moved to California, he attended Cordova High School in Sacramento. He started at Aberdeen Junior College and then transferred to play for the football team at the University of California at Berkeley. In 1979, he was drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals in the 9th round of the NFL draft. However, he quit the team after playing 2 games as a pro. He moved on to the Canadian Football League and signed up briefly with the Oakland Raiders, but his will to win had disappeared somewhere along the way. Rozier, who was extremely religious for most of his life, joined a cult called the Nation of Yahweh. After a series of petty crimes for which he served a 6-month prison sentence and changed his name to Neriah Israel or Child of God, the Brotherhood, also known as the Nation of Yahweh, became a radical black supremacist group in Miami, Florida throughout the 1980s. The group followed the teachings of Yahweh ben Yahweh. His followers referred to him as the Son of God. Most people, including the Miami mayor at the time, respected Yahweh as a valued member of the community and a charitable figure. They had no idea how violent the group was. In reality, Yahweh was instructing his followers to murder numerous people, and the group carried out multiple murders in their headquarters called the Temple of Love. Yahweh might have never been convicted for his crimes if it wasn't for Rozier. To gain entrance to the exclusive group, applicants were required to kill a white devil and bring a part of their body back. This set Rozier on a deadly path that would see him murder 7 innocent people to please the Brotherhood. One of his first orders was to go out and kill a white man to prove his worth. As he walked the streets, he came across Raymond Kelly, who had consumed a bit too much alcohol and was asleep in his car in the parking lot behind the lounge he had been all evening. Rozier, spotting Kelly, walked up to the car, opened the door, and stabbed Kelly with his sword over and over. He had to take back a token of proof, so he cut off one of Kelly's ears, but he dropped it and couldn't find it, so he had to cut off the other one. Cecile Branch didn't like the harassment he received from cult members on the street, and on one particular day, he pushed a female member out of the way. His license plate number was taken down and 3 members turned up at his apartment that night, but he scared them off. So the 4 death angels, including Rozier, went back, gagged him, and tied him to a chair. They then stabbed him 25 times. His ear was cut off and taken back to Yahweh. The next targets were Anthony Brown and Rudy Broussard. They were against the cult purchasing their apartment building, and they made their opinion known to anyone who listened. So the Death Angels, with Rozier, were sent to sort the problem out on Halloween 1986. First, they lured Broussard out of the apartment and shot him in the head, and Brown tried to escape but was tackled to the ground and shot. This time, there were witnesses. Rozier was arrested that night, October 31, 1986. To help himself, he offered to tell the authorities everything they wanted to know about the crimes being committed by the cult, including the many murders. The former NFL player explained that he was part of a group called the Death Angels. After a Death Angel would commit a murder for Yahweh, they would also be forced to bring back a piece of the victim's ear. Yahweh was eventually found guilty of plotting 14 murders, 2 attempted murders, and a terrorist bombing. Rozier was also found guilty of murder and he was sentenced to 22 years in prison. For the information he gave them, he was put into the Witness Protection Program and given the name Robert Ramses. Rozier, under his new name Ramses, was arrested for bouncing a bad check on February 5, 1999. Police were able to track down 29 bad checks he had passed, adding up to over $2,000. He then told the police his real name, thinking that because he was in the protection program, he couldn't be charged. But he was wrong and he was convicted of fraud. Because he had already spent time in prison, he fell under the 3-strike law in California. Judge Eddie T. Keller sentenced Rozier to serve 25 years to life. He will be eligible for parole in 2024. Hey everyone! I just wanted to express how grateful I am that you took the time to listen to my narration. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I am Twisted Mind and please enjoy the rest of your day. Salamat!